I guess, Jenny, do you want to discuss your story, your personal story about January 6th?
Sure. So my name is Jenny Cudd. I got married after January 6th, so that's been kind of confusing for a lot of people. But now that I've received a full presidential pardon, I'll be legally changing my last name to my married name, which is McCombs. But I'm a January 6th defendant. I was number 68 to be arrested out of 1,600. And I was arrested 1 week after the Capitol. So just to kind of summarize my experience, I went inside the West Terrace door, which was opened by police officers, and they were motioning people inside, which is called entrapment. And I was inside the Capitol for about 19 minutes until I was in the hallway above where Ashley Babbitt was murdered by Capitol Police Officer Lieutenant Michael Byrd. And people were coming out with blood on their hands saying they killed a girl. And I thought, well, things are starting to take a turn, so I should probably exit. And so I exited out the east side of the Capitol, past police officers through an open door just like I'd come in. And I was ultimately charged with 4 misdemeanors and the 1512 felony. I was looking at 20 years in prison, and I took a plea deal from the government, offered me to plead to a Class A misdemeanor for trespassing. And then just to kind of wrap all of that up, in March of 22, I was sentenced to 2 months federal probation and a fine. And I don't know why I have one of the lightest sentences of all of the January 6th defendants. But I guess that's all God business.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I personally would want the shortest amount of punishment as possible myself, if it was for me.
Absolutely.
Did it affect your personal, or how you, like, if you go to Walmart or somewhere like that, do you feel like people look at you differently now?
When it first happened, it was horrifying. I had done a 27-minute long Facebook Live video that night of January 6th, and somebody took a 1-minute clip out where I had especially bombastic language, and they put it on Twitter, and that got 7 million views in 2 days. And so there were 1,200 tips to the FBI about me. In a matter of hours, there were over 1,000 one-star reviews on my previous business. And to Google's credit, they took those down because it was such unusual activity. But that didn't stop all of the wackos from, continuing to leave reviews, even to this day. And I sold that business 1.5 years ago. And so, yeah, as far as the effects of January 6th, looking over my shoulder for the first time ever, being publicly humiliated, the different comments and hate mail and death threats, and people random strangers texting my home address to me and telling me that they're going to be there. All of that stuff happened. And I'm glad that now, as of 1.5 years ago, I live in a different town in Texas and have a new last name and kind of have a blank slate, so that's really nice. But that hasn't happened for a whole lot of January 6th defendants.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of them that are probably just getting out and stuff like that, they're definitely going to have to still have that battle to wage, if you will.
For sure.
Shoot, now my mind just went blank. So you decided you're going to do this J6 Road Home project with your husband, correct?
Yes.
Actually, what are you guys like planning to do? What's your aim there? What do you want to discuss about that?
So I'm very excited about it. This is the concept is something I've been working on for about 2.5 years since I got off of federal probation. I was very involved and still am in all the different J6 organizations, and realized pretty early on that they were all focused on what do we do with the J6ers today? How do we get money on their commissary while they're in prison so that they can get basic things like shoes and toiletries and protein, things that the Bureau of Prisons doesn't have to provide. How can we write them letters in prison? How can we take care of their wife and kids and make sure that their house isn't foreclosed on, or that the kids have back to school clothes, different things like that. And nobody was working on what do we do with these men and women long term when they get out of prison. And so I believe that's the mission that God gave me, and been working on that for 2.5 years. And then my husband and I moved down here to the Texas Hill Country about 1.5 years ago, and have 11 beautiful acres and plenty of room to build and grow and everything. And so what we've been able to put together with a whole lot of other people is a comprehensive reintegration program for the January 6th defendants to help them build a new life after prison. So we're building 5 tiny homes. We have 2 stood up right now, and we're starting to do electrical work on the inside of those. We have doctors and counselors and pastoral care across the country. We've got jobs lined up. I'll be cooking everybody dinner. So that's going to be great. We actually just got our first J6er here today from, he was in Florida, originally from New Jersey, but was in Florida. And I just picked him up at the airport, and bless his heart, he doesn't have anything, and he's completely overwhelmed. And so I told him to just, take it easy and just see if you can unwind some and take a nap or whatever it is, because it's a whole lot to take in all at once. But we have about 3 other guys that are coming our way here in the next week or so. And we're so excited to be able to help people build a new life. A lot of these guys have lost everything. If they had a small business, they lost that pretty early on. A lot of them lost their homes. A lot of them received Dear John letters in prison and wound up being divorced and their children taken from them. And, have just especially had their name just completely slandered in not just national media, but also in local media, and don't really have anything to go home to. And so we're hoping that all of those guys are going to come out here at some point.
Right on. How many people would you like to see one day there?
So we're building 5 tiny homes, and they're all just little 1-bedroom, 1-bath houses, so everybody has their own space. A lot of these guys have had to share a prison cell for 4 years, so I think it's important for everybody to have their own house.
Yeah.
And then we've had several people in the community that have volunteered RVs or, rental homes, different things like that. And so we'll just kind of see how God figures it out, because of course we're not going to get 1,600 J6ers down here. A lot of them do have homes to go back to, but the ones that don't, we will find a way to house them. I can tell you that much.
Right on. When you pick that, if it's not too personal to ask it, when you pick that guy up today, do you think he was more excited or almost more sad that he had to face the reality of what am I coming back to?
He's very excited, very emotional. We pulled into my driveway and he said, "Is this my new home?" And started crying. Of course, I've been crying all day. And, one of the things that I think is kind of miraculous about all of this January 6th mess is most people go to school for something or get a job in whatever field and wind up doing that for forever. Very few people ever have an opportunity to build a whole new life or to do something different than what they've always done. And yeah, that's super overwhelming, but it's also exciting at the same time, that these guys get to do that. Not necessarily by choice, because they lost everything, as a result of the insanity around January 6th. But either way, they get to build a new life. And so everybody that's coming down to us is real excited about that. And of course, it's very emotionally overwhelming too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in search of a fresh start, but these guys hopefully will get that.
Absolutely. We all got a full and complete presidential pardon
Yeah.
on Monday, which hasn't sunk in for any of us, at all. I've been on the phone, I'd say 15 hours a day since Monday for sure, with helping coordinate. There's people all over. I just got a phone call before I came on your show of a man in Florida that is literally homeless. He was released from prison after he got the presidential pardon, and he doesn't have anywhere to go. He still has the, prison sweats that they give you, and doesn't really have anywhere to go. And so as soon as I get off the show with you, I'm going to be working on finding somewhere for that guy.
Right on. So you're not just trying to get people there, you're trying to get people where or help out wherever you can.
Absolutely. So one of the really cool things that's happened since we launched our website, the j6roadhome.com, is that I've had people across the country reach out and say, hey, I've got a roofing company in Pennsylvania, or I've got a water treatment facility in Georgia, and I'm happy to hire these guys. All different kinds of jobs from all over the place. And then also a lot of people that have offered different types of housing, like if they have a little rental house, or, a kind of a house at the back of their property, something like that, that is available, that are willing to step up and to help a stranger in need. And I think that's what we're all supposed to do, So yes, now that we've gotten through the initial part of getting the prisoners out, almost all of them are out. So we have about 230 prisoners that have walked out of prison since Monday night. And we still have, it's anywhere from like 10 to 12 that are being held hostage in the DC gulag. And we have the vice president involved on that, the U.S. Marshals, several congressmen have shown up over there. And we're not entirely sure what the holdup is, but at this point, it's very much a hostage situation. It's unlawful imprisonment, because those guys got a presidential pardon. Like, there's nothing higher than that. And so there's people, tons and tons of people up in DC at that jail still working on getting the rest of our people out. And then, the different needs are starting to come in. We've got some guys that I talked to, some of their family members yesterday, that, went back home after being gone for 4 years, and find out that their wife left them, and they didn't know that. And now they have to move back in with their parents, and they're a grown man, and people that are really struggling with the trauma, the PTSD of having been in prison for 4 years and whatever it is that they experienced in there. So we've kind of shifted, from the focus being getting everybody out of prison to, okay, now how do we help them in all these different ways?
Mental health is probably one of the top.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they probably didn't get much help with that while they were in prison.
No.
At least.
Sorry about that. That's another
good.
call. I forgot to turn my phone off.
You're fine. At least from inside the jail, they probably weren't getting much help. I'm sure outside sources probably helped them as much as they could.
It's pretty difficult, and there's a lot of traumatic things that happened to a lot of these guys while they were incarcerated, things that shouldn't ever happen to anybody. And most of the prisons were definitely against them. A lot of them were assaulted by the jailers, by the guards. That's been going on for 4 years now. And so now that they're finally out, it's almost this weird like manic state, in a sense, for them to have been locked up for so long. And now they're not just free, but they're also completely pardoned. Like, all of that is off of their record. And so they have a lot of energy, a lot of confusion, and a lot of, okay, now what am I supposed to do? Because we very clearly had a specific fight for 4 years, and, right, known who it was that we were fighting, the government, the Department of Injustice. And now it's like, okay, what do I do? What do I do with all of this? So, there's a lot of people across the country that are really struggling right now. There's also a whole lot of families that are really, really happy and that are reunited at last. You know, a lot of these guys have never seen their children that were born in the last, 4 years. And so there's some really miraculous stuff that's happening as well.
Yeah, it's good to see for sure some positive come out of this. What does a pardon actually mean for someone like you who's paid your debt to society, if you will? You don't get like a reimbursement on your fine or anything like that, right?
We shall see. There's some people looking into that right now.
Right on.
So honestly, it hasn't sunk in with me yet at all. And I'm kind of glad because I've been so focused on, immediately helping others that have these great needs.
Right.
And I don't think that it's sunk in for any of us yet. For me personally, and I've said this for weeks and weeks, knowing that the presidential pardon was coming on day one, for me personally, it won't have a massive impact on my life because I was only convicted of a trespassing misdemeanor. But for some of my friends, I mean, out of the 1,600 January 6 defendants, there's 186 who are military veterans. And some of them served our country honorably for over 20 years. And those guys were treated horribly, horribly by the government and were falsely convicted of felony charges and lost their voting rights and lost their gun rights. And I know it hasn't sunk in for them yet, because now they're no longer felons.
Right on.
And they get to have their Second Amendment back and they get to vote again. And all of these things that those men and women literally fought for our country so that you and I could be free. And so none of that stuff has sunk in for us yet. I think that there's going to be a whole bunch of us that go and try to buy guns here pretty soon. I can tell you that much, just to see if that background check clears.
Right.
And if not, we're going to be raising hell about it. That's one thing that I have not tried to do since January 6th is to purchase a firearm because I didn't want the possibility of that feeling of being rejected
Right.
over
I
a
hear you.
trespassing charge,
Right.
or that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to raise hell about this, and now fight this. So it'll probably take a while for all of the different systems to catch up,
Right.
for these presidential pardons and all of these felonies that are wiped clean and misdemeanors that are wiped clean. But it's pretty exciting. It's really pretty
Yeah.
exciting. It's historical. Nothing like this has ever happened before.
Right. I'll be interested to see. I've seen a couple people post on maybe just one person on X about since they were charged by the state, they were not getting, I think, their weapon back. And because I guess the pardon doesn't cover that, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
So there's a handful of guys that caught state charges as a direct result of January 6th. And so we're working on those two because those guys are still incarcerated. So even though their January 6th case, if it was still active, has now been completely dismissed, or if they had already been convicted and sentenced for January 6th, then that has now been wiped clean with the pardon. But it's kind of like the fruit of a poisonous tree is the saying around these handful of cases. Because there's a guy right now, his name's Benjamin Martin, and he's from California. And I think that's who you're referencing that you saw on Twitter. And so his January 6th stuff is gone. But as a result of all of the media attention and nonsense from January 6th, when the FBI raided his house in California, which has very strict gun laws, his girlfriend had locked in a safe some guns that she had licensed. She had all the permitting, all the paperwork, whatever, all of that kind of stuff for, legally owned them. They were not his. And when he was raided by the FBI for January 6th stuff, then the state brought gun charges against him. So that would not have happened had he not been charged for January 6th. And so he actually had to turn himself into prison yesterday.
Jeez.
For the gun charges, which is horrifying. He should be a free man. So there's a lot of us in the J6 community that are actively working on getting him out right now.
That's probably an uphill battle, right, with California involved.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
and even not just California, there's another guy, Jeremy Brown, who is a military veteran, special forces, combat veteran. I mean, just a phenomenal guy, and exact same similar situation with him. If it weren't for all of the attention from January 6th, then the state wouldn't have brought other charges against him. And so they're keeping him in prison as well. And he's a literal American hero. So we're working on, around the clock, like the information is in front of the vice president. Like we were working around the clock trying to get these guys all the way out.
Yeah. Hopefully Trump can only do so much with the state stuff, right?
Right. So Trump can only do federal stuff. But we're going to need Ron DeSantis to give Jeremy Brown a state pardon, which will clear up the rest of that. And he'll finally be reinstated as the American hero that he is.
Right.
And so Trump certainly has, all the pull in the world right now and can make those phone calls and hopefully get that done.
I don't know how much pull he would have with that Newsom character, though, unfortunately. But
Trump's pretty good at negotiating.
Yeah. That is true. Anything's possible. We'll root for the best. Do you think this has kind of made you guys like one big family, right? It's more than just, you're not so much a community. You're like a real family, right?
Yeah, it's really been crazy because none of us would have volunteered for this.
Right.
January 6th defendants, we are a cross section of the country. So there's 1,600 of us, give or take a few. And we are from all over the country, all 50 states, all race, color, and creed, different beliefs, different levels of activism, different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, mental health status, all of that, education, all of those things. And we're just a cross section of the country. And it's really amazing the people that have come together in these last 4 years, because all of us have experienced prosecution and persecution at the hands of the federal government and at the hands of local media, and being humiliated in our own communities and having our businesses and our livelihoods and, be affected, and our friends reject us, or people that we thought were friends, different things like that. And so it's really been amazing that, one event has created so much grief and trauma in so many people's lives that it absolutely binds us together for forever. I know there's a lot of J6ers that are ready to just move on and put this behind them and someday hope that it never happened. And I wish them all the best in the world, but that's not how something this traumatic works. We've been in it for at least 4 years, and, now's the time to start the healing process. And we're going to be in it for at least another 4 years. So we've got a long ways to go. But, it's really amazing the people that have stepped up to advocate for us and to help us that didn't have to. People that weren't there, don't have a loved one that is a January 6th defendant. It's what America is, right? It's what America is. It's the same thing if you see all of the strangers that have helped people out in North Carolina after that got destroyed, and people that have donated RVs and gone to do cleanup or moved somebody into their house, that all of a sudden was homeless. It's what America is.
Yeah. Hopefully we can bring that back a lot more prevalent or make that more prevalent in America again. It's a lot of division, and I'm probably guilty of that myself, but hopefully we can reunite to some degree.
Absolutely. Well, my experience has been that I can have a conversation with any human being in person, or like this,
Right.
and can probably find something that we have in common. And I think the more that we actually talk to people, the more we find out how united we actually are, because social media, unfortunately, is the greatest tool of division.
Right.
And it's a lot easier for people to just run their mouth on social media versus they would never actually say that to somebody in person.
True.
And for people that, maybe against January 6ers or different things like that, I think what we have in common with anyone is the basic human emotions, of fear and shame and betrayal. And some people regret it. I personally did not regret it, but it took me a long time to get there, and everybody has experienced the basic human emotions. And so, if nothing else, that's something that unites us.
If people want to donate to the cause or find more, find more information about you, where should they go?
So they can go to my website, j6roadhome.com. And that's the easiest way to find out. You can see pictures of our property and read about our whole mission, who all is involved and partnered with us. Get a lot of information about the J6ers, and then there's so many ways to get involved. I'm amazed at how creative some people have been. We had a sweet little lady that mailed us 2 sets of queen size sheets. She asked me what
Right on.
size bed, and she goes, "Okay, I'm going to mail you some sheets." I had another lady from California that sent a Visa gift card, that she probably got for Christmas. And then we've had countless tradesmen, skilled laborers that have contacted me through the website to donate their services. We're located in Central Texas in the Texas Hill Country, and have just had so many electricians and welders and carpenters and all of that, contact us and say, "Hey, we want to be part of this." And then we've also had 3 vehicles donated, which is awesome
Nice.
because
Yeah.
these guys have to have something to drive.
Right.
And then 2, for anybody across the country that is an employer that is interested in hiring a J6er in your area, please contact me through the website, through the tab on the website, so that I can get you set up with the people that so desperately need to get back to work and get back on their feet again.
Right on. If you had one main message that you would like to share through your story, if you will, what would that be?
Absolutely. So I don't think that anybody's entire life or entire future should be dictated off of the choices that they made one day. I believe that everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a hand up. And that's what it is that we're doing to help these people. We believe that God restores all things. And I'm so excited to see the miracles that are going to be taking place here in the next few days and weeks.
I know you're pretty busy right now, so I'll try to keep this as short as I can. So, is there anything that you feel like I didn't ask you about or forgot to ask you about that maybe you feel the need to get out there?
I think we've kind of covered the overall picture of it. One thing that I would challenge people to think about is the overall cost of January 6th, just to the taxpayers. This has been the largest FBI manhunt in history. And you think of the families who were pulled out in the middle of the night when the FBI raided their house, and they were pulled out and thrown on the snow and had red dot lasers pointed at the wife and the kids because the FBI went to go arrest a man for January 6th. And the taxpayers paid for that. And you think about all of the government prosecutors and public defenders and court-appointed attorneys and investigators. And I mean, there was billions and billions of taxpayer dollars that were spent on this weaponized Department of Injustice against the American people. And now all of that was for what? Right? We've all been pardoned. All of it was for what? I can't wait to find out what the final number is of how many billions of dollars American taxpayers were forced to pay into this. And I hope that it makes people really angry. Really angry. And I hope that people get involved, because local action has national results. And the only thing that we can usually actually affect is our local city or community or county or the state, and just work your way up from there. But I believe that everybody needs to be in politics because politics is certainly involved in all of us in every single aspect. So there's not really an excuse to not be involved, to not show up to your school board meetings or your city council or your county commissioners courts, different things like that. If there's something you don't like about this country, go out and change it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I should ask you one last question. I know I said that was the last one, but it just popped in my head. What's your feelings on the J6 committee getting pardoned preemptively?
It's pretty horrifying. Biden pardoned more people. I believe it was over 8,000 people. Pardoned more people than, good grief, the last 10 presidents combined. Is letting out a lot of murderers and rapists, child rapists, and people that are on death row. And what he did in the final hours of his presidency in order to preemptively, like you said, pardon the wholly unconstitutional sham Hollywood production January 6th committee is, we expected it. We expected it. That doesn't make our anger any less about it. Also, some of the other people that he preemptively pardoned. I mean, a preemptive pardon is really, really, really rare, right? Because what are you to be pardoned from? There have been no charges brought against you. And, him pardoning Dr. Fauci, who committed crimes against humanity. And I just saw in the news that Russia is going to try to extradite Dr. Fauci to prosecute him for crimes against humanity. And I sure hope they get that. But with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and all of those wackos that were part of that sham January 6th committee and have destroyed evidence and had Hollywood producers involved to broadcast that to the country, to paint all of us as domestic terrorists and white supremacists, regardless of our skin color. And, these vast right-wing extremist, nut jobs. And now for all of them to be preemptively pardoned, that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough pill to swallow. A lot of people keep telling me that Bible verse about vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Yep.
And I'm really looking forward to that happening. When God figures all of that, I mean, he's got it all figured out, right? But when we get to see that happen, because I think that, not just from January 6th, but also from, the BLM Antifa George Floyd riots across the country and those people not being prosecuted, and the pro-life people that prayed outside of abortion clinics that are currently locked up. There's so many reasons why the vast majority of Americans don't believe in justice, and they should not, because our country does not have free, fair, equal, blind justice. It is not. It's not what our justice system is. And so people should doubt that, should 100% doubt that. And I think until there are actual bad guys brought to court and thrown in jail for the crimes that they have committed against our country and against our people, I don't believe that people will begin to believe and trust the justice system again. The people like Dr. Fauci, the people like the Clintons. I mean, good grief, the fact that we don't have Jeffrey Epstein's list and those people haven't been to prison, right? We don't even know who those people are.
Right.
All of that stuff. And yet they go against dads and moms and grandparents that were standing outside and never even went inside the Capitol on January 6th. And they were there to redress the government for their grievances, as we have a constitutional right to do. And they were thrown in prison for 4 years and everything was taken from them. It doesn't make any sense. But I can tell you that the Department of Injustice awoke a beast with the January 6th prosecutions and persecutions, because there's 1,600 of us. And now all of our families and our loved ones and supporters and spouses and children and on and on and on, that have all of a sudden become quite passionate about criminal justice reform. And, we weren't involved in that until it happened to us. And a lot of times that's just how life is. Once it affects you, then you care about it. And so I'm excited to see moving forward how it is that we, the January 6th defendants, will wind up changing the criminal justice system, and will wind up changing the Bureau of Prisons and the torture and abuse that prisoners have to go through. And that will be a very, very miraculous day.
Well, I think we're all rooting for you, and we wish you guys the best.
Thank you.
Jenny, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, but I'll let you get back to your new guest, or your new family member, if you will.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on your show, and I really appreciate you giving a platform to. I've seen some of the other interviews you've done with J6ers, and I think we're going to keep you busy for quite a while, because there's so many guys that now are finally free and safe to be able
Right.
to start telling their stories, and they desperately want to get that information out there, because they've been shut up, for 4 years.
Right.
So we appreciate any platform that is willing to give us a voice. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, if you run across anyone who wants to come on, give them my info, or you can do that. I don't have a problem with that.
I sure will. Absolutely.
I appreciate it, Jenny.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Nick.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Bye.